Jury selection has just taken place last week, or the week of October 21st, for the trial of Marine veteran Daniel Penny. The 26-year-old faces charges of second-degree manslaughter and criminally negligent homicide for the death of a 30-year-old man named Jordan Neely. The trial is expected to last 6 weeks. Penny has pled not guilty. Last year, Penny placed Neely in a chokehold after he began yelling, threatening passengers, and saying he was ready to kill someone in a crowded New York City subway car. A bystander filmed Penny holding Neely in a chokehold until he appeared to lose consciousness. NYPD officers arrived and said Neely had a faint pulse and he was given Narcan and CPR on the scene. He was transported to a hospital where he was pronounced dead. His death was ruled a homicide by compression of the neck. Neely was homeless and reportedly battled mental illness. Neely had an extensive criminal record, including 42 arrests on charges including petty larceny, jumping subway turnstiles, theft, and 3 unprovoked assaults on women in the subway between 2019 and 2021. Penny faces up to 19 years in prison if he is convicted. The case has sparked debate about issues surrounding race. Penny is white and Neely is black. Use of force, self-defense, and urban crime. What are your thoughts on the case of Daniel Penny and the line between self-defense and potentially lethal force? I mean, this goes actually right into your wheelhouse of preparation, mindset. You and I have done together. We have facilitated force on force drills, simulation, grappling. And I mean, I'll speak from my experience. You've put on many more than I have of these. It is shocking to see people's difference on how they think they're going to perform, what they think they knew, what they think their line is, how well they think they are prepared. And then when they are confronted in a training environment, knowing that the guns aren't real, knowing that somebody's wearing a red man suit, knowing that there's medical attention and supervision, they come unwound. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's insane. This is a very good topic to talk about because it's right in our wheelhouse. Both you and I and your wife, are both Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belts. And we leverage a lot of her expertise, your expertise, some tactical experiences that we've had, and this idea of personal defense, bringing kind of everything together, introducing stress and having people work through problem solving, which is mostly what it is, while under stress. And most people are under duress from all the examples that we've seen in training. A lot of people have an idea of how they're going to act or respond, and the reality is it's mostly skewed. What's in their head and what actually happens under the most duress. I'm very familiar with this case. It's something that I've paid a lot of attention to because of the precedent it potentially could set for responsible citizens and good Samaritans getting involved. It brings up the controversy, especially in New York City, where crime overall, as not depicted by the FBI, because they just changed the statement on the FBI website, everybody's been depicting that crime has been down on a downward trend. It's actually gone up. It's rose in 2022, which is a couple of years behind, which is how it worked, by 4.5%. That's a lot of rapes, murders, a lot of violent crime, including when you look at this tragic circumstances of a responsible citizen subduing a person who was acting crazy, walking around, acting insane. And not only was he not doing specifically a chokehold, but I don't think that was the overall intent. He was doing a submission. And I want to reflect on your experience because you know exactly what I'm talking about. Chokehold is what's been put into the narrative, and it's been expressed by both the prosecution and the district attorney's office in New York, and also by people who want to see Daniel Penny, who happens to be a white guy in this case, when he had the help of an African-American man who was trying to subdue this man. What is the difference between a submission or a blood choke versus an air choke?
Blood choke is exactly that. You are cutting off oxygenated blood to the brain, which causes you to pass out pretty quickly. And from somebody who participates almost daily in trying to choke my friends unconscious, and they also try to choke me unconscious, it can get a little euphoric at times because the blood flow to your brain, sometimes they got 80% of it, and you're not really going to go out, so you're going to fight it a bit, and you just venture into the ether world a little bit, and things start coming in on you, and it doesn't hurt, and you wake up from it. And I have seen, I'm not going to say countless people choked unconscious at this point. Actually, I'm going to take that back. It would be a strangle. A blood choke is considered blood choke. A blood submission is going to be considered a strangle, taking the words from John Danaher, one of the most accomplished jiu-jitsu coaches. He calls a rear naked choke a rear naked strangle because you are not cutting off somebody's ability to breathe. You are cutting off the oxygenated blood that is traveling up the arteries in their throat. The person wakes up. I've watched it happen countless times. I'm assuming if you had some compounding medical issues, it could be an issue. But I participate in this almost every single day. And it is a move with very, very limited training that can be done safely and, in my opinion, presents very little, if no threat to life. A choke would be a way of restricting airflow into your body. Now we're talking about largely suffocation. And I'm not a doctor and I'm not trying to get into medical terms, but it's an important difference. Blood flow interrupted to the brain versus oxygen flow, air being absorbed by your lungs. And that is not I guess that could be used as a submission in jiu-jitsu, but people are going to panic before they become unconscious. I mean, it's not legal to do, but sometimes with your friends, it's fun to put your hand over their face when they're struggling a little bit to get them to choke a bit. You can do compressions of the windpipe. There are a few specific chokes that you can do that is, the bladed portion of your forearm pressing against the windpipe. It is extremely painful. You're likely going to get a gag reflex from it. People are tapping due to pain compliance. I suppose if you took it to its natural extension and compressed the front of the neck to the back of the neck, that could be lethal, but most people in that environment are going to tap due to a pain compliance situation. And this is one issue that I think it's misunderstood. I believe that NYPD has a no stranglehold policy right now. They are not allowed to use a rear naked choke. And again, people can go back and forth. Is it a choke or is it a strangle? And that's an episode in and of itself. With minimal training and minimal understanding, in my opinion, when this is all that it counts for, it is likely one of the most effective ways to quickly and painlessly subdue somebody who is losing their fucking mind.
Yeah, I think that articulation is very important and what will likely be the defense of this entire case. Because look, for the charge of, I believe it's second-degree manslaughter, you would have to have an intent to actually harm, like he wanted to kill him, and he had no intent. And I think what he wanted to do, just as he demonstrated in subduing the man in the first place, while he was helped by other people, including an African American male that was on site, is subdue somebody who is threatening other people. And that's what responsible, caring, good Samaritans should do in the first place. I think the problem is with all the politics involved, just like the George Floyd case, which you can't even say that out loud without the algorithm picking up and detecting it and suppressing it, because it's such a volatile topic to discuss, but it should be discussed. Because from my perspective, we have to look at what is the intent of the individual that potentially has harmed or even killed a person. And I think from the onset, his intent was to protect other people. And that's the controversy, because it should have been New York police officers doing that. But based on all the politics, based on the defunding of the police, especially in New York and other cities, they weren't allowed to do their jobs, and they weren't doing their jobs. And there was a lot of complaints. And even today, we're still dealing with that, with deep corruption, which should be an episode in itself, of the mayor of New York City, et cetera, where his entire staff has resigned. So I'm weighing on the side of them not setting a new legal precedent and charging a good Samaritan who had good intent. And I would make the argument that he potentially there were other factors besides him passing away from potentially suffocating, because he was on drugs. He obviously wasn't in the best physical condition, and there are other factors that I think will play into the defensive case. And, it's a very volatile time in our country. And I think these things are very technical, as you described, and we should be discussing them that way.
What do you think would happen societally from the perspective of people being willing to jump in and take matters into their own hand, assist other citizens, be willing to subdue somebody who is clearly articulating the desire to do harm to somebody else if he is tried and found guilty of murder? Do you think that that would have cascading consequences on people's willingness to step in?
Absolutely. I mean, we have the Good Samaritan law on the books for that exact reason, because there was a period of time where a lot of people were getting civilly sued for helping. And so a car would be flipped upside down, it would be on fire. And this is actually a case. A gentleman would break in there, crash in there, further injure the person that was already injured, pull them out of a burning car where they would certainly perish, and then they would be civilly sued and be held liable. And so a lot of people started bypassing these incidents where you saw somebody in harm's way and potentially about to die, and you would just drive your car back by, you pick up the phone and record it, which still happens today. And so they developed this new ordinance of this Good Samaritan law, which basically said if you did that and the person was further injured or passed away, you could be held liable for actually bypassing it. And it gets very convoluted. Think about it from a police perspective. The police are in that exact situation where they go in to help, something happens, it goes wrong, they wind up injuring or killing somebody, they get prosecuted. They have a qualified immunity from civil suit, but they get prosecuted by the DA's office. So now law enforcement officers more than ever are very reserved and less willing to go into harm's way to help people because they don't want to go to prison for the rest of their lives. And I would feel that same way. So certainly it's going to have a profound impact. And I even thinking about it from my own personal perspective and us teaching this personal defense class. I'm teaching November 9th at Phil Craft HQ in Provo. And I'm actually going to change the curriculum based on my own personal experiences dealing with law enforcement, but also just understanding that, hey, if you get too involved and you don't know what you're doing and you're just trying to be a good guy, that might not be enough. You might end up in handcuffs yourself.
What do you think, in your mind, what is the responsibility of a citizen who is on that train? And, there's one thing that we have to discuss about this, and this is from my understanding of how this occurred. In the courses that you and I have taught together, we stress distance because distance can equate to time to make decisions, time to understand what's going on, time to look at people's hands to identify, are they friend or foe? Do they have threat? Do they have the desire to do harm? You put yourself in an enclosed environment on a subway in New York, that's largely gone, depending on how close this person is to you. So we have to strip that portion of the conversation away. What role or obligation in your mind does a citizen have in that situation? Or do they have any?
Yeah, I mean, that's the best question because it comes down to a moral and ethical dilemma. Here's my personal take on it because I train this, and this is what I'm going to advise my students in the reforming of this class. One, you only get involved in what you could technically affect based on your training, your aptitude, and your personal courage. I also think there are extreme circumstances whereby if the person's life is on the line and you feel the moral or ethical need or desire to get involved, you should. So what I want people to understand is like there are many situations nearly daily that happen in our own towns and cities that potentially require technical expertise where people's lives aren't on the line. It's the Good Samaritans who fell and sprung their ankle or broke their leg or injured in a vehicle accident, where you, because you have training in emergency response or crisis management or first aid, can very well affect the impact of that. But there are other circumstances where you have no technical expertise and somebody's drowning in water, somebody potentially is burning alive in a car, where you have to make that moral and ethical decision under a lot of pressure. This particular case, nobody's life was in danger from what I've read of the case. And that's the conundrum, because it's like, well, nobody's life was endangered, yet you involved yourself. Now, if me and you were involved in this, technically, that dude would have been out in a matter of seconds, especially with a lot of pressure. Like, a lot of people understand this idea of this choke, or blood versus airway, but they don't know and understand the effect of, or the impact of pressure. And for me and you to do that amount of pressure would nearly instantaneously. I've seen it instantaneously. I mean, before targets, when I was a sniper and we were setting containment, and we knew we had a period of time before the breach went off, if we were in a house where somebody was essentially going to compromise the assault force, and they got crazy, we wouldn't put masking tape over the mouth. I put them in a rear naked choke, apply pressure, and they would be out and go to sleep. By the time they woke up, the assault was already conducted. It was very safe and very ethical based on the circumstances we were involved with in war. If me and you were involved in that, that person would have been out in a very short period of time, put to sleep, and then even knowing the tactics to recover them would have been appropriate. Unfortunately, I don't think Penny knew specifically how to do that, and he was doing his best. Now, that's going to be the weight of the burden that he deals with in this case, and it's going to be hard to see. I really couldn't tell you where I think it's going to go. I'm afraid, though, it's going to further disrupt good, responsible citizens who want to affect good impact and change, especially with all the politics involved with law enforcing. And I don't like it, man. I hate to see Penny go to prison for 20 years based on him knowing and feeling he was doing the right thing when it was potentially a tragic accident.
Yeah, I think it's really important for people to understand and actually know where their limitations lie. Like you mentioned, there is a knowledge and technical capacity criteria for almost anything in life. Whether it's parenting, owning a business, whatever it may be. Your role with your significant other. You have to have a certain knowledge level. Maybe that's a knowledge of who you are, but a technical capacity in communication or empathy or all of these things. In that subway environment, that one sucks because of the reduction of the space, right? You're in a controlled, contained environment with somebody like that. But if you don't know what you're doing, or you've never actually thought through or practiced or tested what your limitation and knowledge level is, man, that's not the place to be asking yourself those questions. I think, the best advice I have for people in a situation like this is to know who you are and what you are capable of before you find yourself in that position. It's going to take an investment in your time. And it's going to take an investment in your money. And I'm by no means trying to force people down the line of jiu-jitsu or Krav or striking. Fuck, do whatever you want to do. There's no such thing as a game day player where a person that rises to the occasion when presented with something like this. You fall to the level of your training. And if you have no training, you have no experience, you have no exposure, that's the person that you're going to be. And you could accidentally end up killing somebody. And I'm not a medical expert. I have no idea if Penny's actions were in fact what killed this individual or it was a combination of those things. But that's what you don't want to do, is see yourself fighting out of a 19-year potential prison sentence. The best advice I can give to people is know who you are and test yourself before the world tests you. Because this national/global stage, like you mentioned, has a combination of, for whatever reason, political, race, policing, society. It's a fucking mess. I mean, every issue that we could face is encapsulated in this. And this man is living this. And I agree with you. I think he was doing the best that he could in that situation. I guess what I would say to people is, how good do you want your best to be? Because my answer to you, or my suggestion to you, would be it can be better. And I'm speaking for myself, and I'm sure you would say the same thing. I am not comfortable with where I am now. I'm on a constant journey to better myself in every aspect of my life.
Yeah, well said.
Order now. The two women who were killed and found dismembered in Juarez on Sunday were from El Paso.
On the southern border, there is a legal concept known as reasonable fear, a lifeline for those fleeing violence.
A Texas couple was found tortured and murdered.
Police say so far this month, 11 women have been killed in Juarez.
And then their bodies or body parts offered up to Santa Muerte as an offering. She represents death.
In this special Borderland docuseries, I take a deep dive onto true crime stories. Join me as we uncover the truth about the fear behind the crisis.
This was a group of powerful people.
Never been seen before in Mexico.
Evidence of ritualistic elements.
We ended up rescuing almost 200 kids.
The discovery of multiple women in mass graves.
They're almost in every state.
When you put it together, you have an economic extortion map.
But even more violent.